Ever wish you had like a cheat sheet for the world of money? Well, that's kind of what we're doing in this deep dive today.
Yeah,
We're going deep into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
a classic.
Oh, yeah. It sold millions of copies, and it's really sparked so many conversations about wealth and how to build it. So, we're going to unpack the core ideas from the book.
Yep.
The ones that really struck us, the ones that really made us kind of stop and go, that's interesting.
Get those wheels turning.
And hopefully you'll walk away with some new insights, too, some things to think about.
That's true. This book isn't just about like crunching numbers and stuff. It's really about rewiring your thinking around money.
Yeah.
And Kiyosaki uses his own life story to show how differently people can view wealth, what it really means.
Right off the bat, he throws you into his world growing up with two dads.
Two dads, two perspectives.
Yeah.
It's a great way to set things up.
And they're very different, right? So there's his biological dad, very educated, a government official.
Secure job, you'd think.
Right, right. But he was always struggling financially.
Yeah, it's not always what it seems.
And then there's his rich dad, his best friend's father, who built his own empire completely from scratch.
A self-made entrepreneur.
Yeah. And it's that contrast between these two dads, their perspectives on money, that kind of lays the foundation for the whole book, really.
And one of the most interesting, I think, contrasts is their views on the whole root of all evil idea when it comes to money.
That's a big one.
Right. So his educated dad, like many of us, he believed that the love of money was the problem, the root of all evil.
Mm-hmm.
But his rich dad flipped that on its head and said, no, it's actually the lack of money that's the real root of all evil.
That's a pretty bold statement, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Definitely makes you think.
It does, because you start to consider all the problems that can come from not having enough money. Like stress, obviously,
Right.
limited opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, even health issues.
Absolutely. Money troubles can weigh you down.
And it ties into another core concept in the book. This idea that the rich don't work for money, but money works for them.
Right. That's a big one.
Okay, so I have to admit, when I first read that, I was like, okay, that sounds like a catchy slogan,
Yeah, you think it's just a motivational quote?
Right. But Kiyosaki, he doesn't just throw it out there. He actually backs it up with some pretty compelling stories from his own life.
Right. Real life examples. That's what makes it so powerful.
Like the one where he graduates from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, prestigious stuff. And he lands this secure, stable job at Standard Oil. You'd think, okay, his educated dad must be over the moon.
Bragging rights, for sure.
Total bragging rights. But then he quits to join the Marines.
What?
Yeah.
I bet his educated dad was horrified.
No, completely. But guess what? His rich dad actually congratulated him.
Interesting. Why?
Because in Rich Dad's eyes, Kiyosaki wasn't just chasing a paycheck, he was investing in himself.
Makes sense.
Yeah. He was learning leadership skills, discipline, and getting experiences that honestly would be way more valuable than just a steady income.
Right. He was thinking long term.
Yeah. And it's a great example of how Rich Dad, Poor Dad challenges that conventional thinking,
It really shakes things up.
It's not about clinging to that secure job. It's about building a foundation that'll pay off in the long run.
Exactly. And that leads us to one of the, I think, most practical concepts in the book, the whole idea of assets versus liabilities.
Yes.
Which ties directly into his cash flow quadrant.
Okay, assets and liabilities. This is where the rubber meets the road.
It is.
It's not just about how much money you make. It's about how your money is actually working. So an asset, it puts money in your pocket, right?
Right.
Even while you sleep. Whereas a liability takes money out no matter how hard you work.
Draining your account.
Yeah. And I think this is something we can all relate to, right? Like, think about your own life. What's putting money in your pocket right now?
Yeah. Are you building assets?
Maybe you've got some rental income coming in, or dividends from stocks, or even just a side hustle that's really booming.
Right. Those are all good examples.
And then on the flip side, what's consistently taking money out?
What's draining your account?
The mortgage, student loans, that car payment that never seems to end.
It's a constant battle for a lot of people.
It's so easy to get caught in that cycle of just working hard just to cover those liabilities.
It is. It's like a treadmill you can't get off of.
And that's why I think this cash flow quadrant is so helpful. It's simple, but it's a powerful visual that helps you understand, where you are financially and where you might want to be.
Right. It gives you a roadmap.
So remind us again, what are those four quadrants?
Okay, so you've got the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and then the investor.
Hmm.
And the key takeaway is that most people are stuck in those first two, the employee or self-employed quadrants,
Right.
trading their time for money.
Yeah, it's like that hamster wheel we all know too well.
Yeah.
But Kiyosaki's saying that the real path to financial freedom is transitioning into those other two quadrants, the business owner and the investor.
That's where the magic happens.
Well, your money's working for you, not the other way around.
Exactly. Making money while you sleep.
Okay, so let's say you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, all right, I get the concept, but how do I actually do that? How do I shift quadrants?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, like where do I even begin?
Well, Kiyosaki actually gives some really practical advice in the book, starting with challenging some of our most deeply ingrained financial habits. Like, for example, the whole idea of our homes being our biggest asset.
Oh, yeah?
That's like the classic American dream, right? You own your own home, you build equity.
Yeah.
But Kiyosaki kind of throws a wrench in that whole
I
idea.
guess.
He argues that for most people, their home is actually a liability. Think about it. You're constantly putting money into it, right? Mortgage payments, property taxes, repairs, upgrades. It's not putting money in your pocket, it's taking it out.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
It's a constant drain.
So instead of focusing on that dream home, what's he saying we should do?
He's urging us to think about building a portfolio of income-generating assets.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so that could be rental properties, sure, but also businesses, stocks, bonds, maybe even royalties from some kind of intellectual property you create, things that generate that cash flow even when you're not actively working.
He really challenges those traditional ideas around wealth, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not about keeping up with the Joneses or having the biggest house. It's about building a system where your money works harder than you do.
Exactly. And that system is built on something he calls financial intelligence.
Okay, so what's financial intelligence?
It's about understanding how to make money work for you, not against you. And a big part of that is mastering what he calls the art of the deal.
Oh, yeah, okay. This is where that be an Indian giver concept comes into play, right?
Exactly. Do you remember that story about the property he bought for $45,000?
Yeah.
So he didn't just flip it for a quick profit. He held onto it, rented it out, and then when the market rebounded, he sold it for $95,000.
So he more than doubled his money.
Smart move, right?
Yeah, but what's the Indian giver part?
Okay, so he didn't stop there.
Yeah.
Instead of pocketing the profit, he used something called a 1031 tax-deferred exchange.
What's that?
It's basically a strategy where you reinvest your capital gains into a similar asset, and you can defer the taxes you would normally have to pay.
Oh, so he avoided a big tax hit
Yeah,
and got to reinvest that money into a bigger asset.
exactly. So that's what he means by being an Indian giver. You give your money to an investment, but you get it back plus something extra in the long run.
I like that.
Right. And in his case, the something extra was a 12-unit apartment building.
Wow. He went from a small property to this big apartment building.
Exactly. All because he understood the rules of the game and used them to his advantage.
Okay, so this is a powerful illustration of how knowledge and strategy can really amplify your results. It's not just about working hard. It's about working smart.
Absolutely. And that's where Kiyosaki's emphasis on financial intelligence comes in. He says it's not about being born with some magical money gene or anything.
Okay, good.
It's about developing 4 key areas.
Yeah.
Accounting, investing, understanding markets, and the law.
So it's like a four-legged stool, right?
Yeah, good analogy.
You need all 4 of those to have a stable financial foundation.
Exactly. He actually uses a simple analogy to explain this. Imagine 2 young boys, right? They're looking at 2 different cash flow patterns. One pattern shows money flowing into their pockets.
Okay.
The other shows money flowing out.
Out.
Which boy do you think understands how money works?
Well, the one with the money flowing in, obviously.
Right. But what I love about that analogy is that it's not about how much money you have. It's about the direction it's flowing.
I like that. Okay, so let's break down those 4 areas of financial intelligence. When he says accounting, is he suggesting we all become CPAs?
No, not necessarily. But he really emphasizes that accounting is the foundation of financial literacy.
Okay.
It's about understanding how to read and interpret financial statements. And not just for businesses, for your own personal finances too.
So you can see where your money's going.
Exactly. You can identify maybe where you're overspending. Maybe you can analyze potential investments.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about investing? What's his take on that?
He defines investing as the science of making money make more money. It's not about stuffing cash under your mattress or anything.
Right.
It's about putting that money to work for you.
So stocks, bonds, real estate, businesses, all that stuff we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And he actually encourages people to explore different investment options, diversify their portfolios, as they say.
So you put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Okay. 2 down, 2 to go. What does he mean by understanding markets?
Okay, so this is where things get a little more macro, you know. It's about understanding the forces of supply and demand, how market trends influence the price of assets, being able to spot opportunities.
So like knowing when to buy low and sell high, that kind of thing?
That's part of it, but it goes deeper. It's about understanding how different markets operate, from stock markets to real estate markets, even to the market for your own skills and expertise.
Oh, interesting. So knowing your worth in the job market or when a certain industry is ripe for disruption.
Exactly. Being able to, read the signs, position yourself to take advantage of those opportunities.
Okay, last but not least, the law. Is he suggesting we all become lawyers?
No. But he does stress the importance of understanding, the legal and regulatory environment that kind of governs money.
Okay.
So tax laws, corporate structures, even basic contract law.
So knowing how to protect your assets, minimize your tax liability, structure deals in a way that benefits you.
Exactly. It's about playing by the rules, but also understanding those rules so you can operate legally and ethically.
Yeah, this is starting to paint a pretty clear picture, isn't it? Kiyosaki's not just handing out get-rich-quick schemes. He's giving us a roadmap for developing the mindset and the skills to build, like lasting wealth.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that it's a journey. It's not a destination.
Right.
It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a willingness to step outside your comfort zone.
Okay, so let's dive into some of the specific strategies he outlines in the book. What are some of the first steps he recommends for getting started on this path to financial freedom?
Well, he starts by urging us to stop doing what the poor and middle class do.
Oh, okay.
He's not being judgmental or anything. It's about breaking free from certain ingrained habits that can keep people trapped financially.
Okay. So, like what? Give us some examples.
One of the big ones is working solely for money, just constantly trading your time for a paycheck.
Yeah.
He's not saying work is bad, but he's encouraging us to think beyond just earning income, to focus on building those assets.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So maybe instead of just climbing that corporate ladder, you start a side hustle, you invest in a rental property, you learn a new skill that can generate income down the line.
Right.
He also really stresses the importance of what he calls minding your own business, which doesn't necessarily mean starting a company.
Okay, then what does he mean?
He's talking about shifting your focus from your income column to your asset column. Remember, assets are what put money in your pocket even when you're not working.
Okay, so it's about building that passive income stream.
Exactly. That financial cushion.
That lets you sleep well at night, regardless of what's happening with the economy or even with your job.
Exactly. And he actually provides some really specific strategies for acquiring those assets, from businesses and real estate to stocks, bonds, and even royalties from intellectual property.
Okay, so he's given us the what, right? Building assets, but what about the how? What are some practical steps he recommends for actually getting those assets?
Well, he starts by urging us to, keep our expenses low, reduce our liabilities, and diligently build a base of solid assets.
So living below our means, paying down debt, and investing our money wisely.
Exactly. It's about creating that solid financial foundation before you start making any big moves.
He also encourages people to take control of their financial future, right? And to not rely on, employers or the government to kind of provide for them.
Right. He's a big believer in self-reliance, taking personal responsibility for your financial well-being.
That can be a tough pill to swallow for some people, but I can see how it'd be really empowering, too.
It is. Yeah. And he backs it up with concrete advice on how to build that self-reliance. For example, when it comes to acquiring assets, he emphasizes businesses that don't require your presence.
So businesses that can run on autopilot, generating income even when you're not actively working in them.
Exactly. Like owning vending machines, laundromats, or even online businesses that can generate that passive income.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What other asset classes does he recommend?
He's a big fan of real estate, of course.
Yeah.
But he also talks about stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and even notes. Those are kind of like IOUs backed by real estate or other assets.
Okay, so it's about diversifying.
Right. Exactly. Spreading your risk, exploring different options.
But he doesn't just say go buy real estate or invest in stocks,
Huh.
right? He actually gets into some pretty specific advice on how to become a more sophisticated investor.
Right. He takes it to the next level.
Yeah, he talks about finding opportunities that everyone else has missed.
Right.
Raising money,
Yes.
making money with money,
Hmm.
learning from history, and overcoming obstacles.
It's a comprehensive approach.
It is. So let's unpack those a bit. What does he mean by finding opportunities that everyone else missed? Is he talking about insider trading or something illegal?
No, not at all. It's about developing your financial intelligence and using it to spot opportunities that aren't obvious to the average person.
Okay, I see. So maybe it's a property that's been overlooked because it needs some work, but you can see the potential. Or a stock that's undervalued because the market is, freaking out, but you've done your research and you know it's a solid company.
Exactly. It's about seeing value where others don't.
And what about raising money? Is he suggesting we all become venture capitalists?
No, not necessarily. But he does emphasize the importance of understanding how to raise capital,
Okay.
both from traditional sources like banks, but also from private investors.
So if you've got a great business idea or a real estate deal you want to pursue, you need to know how to secure the funding to make it happen.
Exactly. And he provides some practical advice on how to do that, from creating a compelling business plan to building relationships with potential investors.
This is starting to feel a lot more actionable.
It is, right?
It's not just abstract concepts, it's concrete strategies for building wealth.
Right. He gives you the tools.
Yeah, and it all ties back to developing that financial intelligence, those 4 key areas we talked about earlier.
The foundation.
Yeah, accounting, investing, understanding markets, and the law. Those are like the building blocks of financial freedom.
Absolutely. They give you the confidence to navigate the world of money and make informed decisions.
Okay, before we wrap up this part, let's talk about some of those mental and emotional hurdles that often, I think, hold people back from actually achieving financial success. Kiyosaki, he doesn't shy away from that psychological side of money, does he?
Not at all. He dedicates a whole section of the book to discussing what he calls the 5 major roadblocks to financial success.
Okay, hit us with it. What are they?
Fear, cynicism, laziness,
Yeah.
arrogance, and bad habits.
Whoa, that's a pretty hefty list. It sounds like he's calling out all our deepest insecurities.
He is, in a way,
Hmm.
but he does it in a compassionate and empowering way, I think. He's not saying these roadblocks are insurmountable, just that, they're normal and we all struggle with them to some degree.
So let's break those down a bit, starting with fear. What kind of fear is he talking about?
Okay, so fear of failure, fear of losing money, fear of the unknown, all those things that can really paralyze us and prevent us from taking action.
He even tells a story about how he learned to overcome his own fear of public speaking, which he realized was holding him back from promoting his book and sharing his message with the world.
So what did he do?
Basically, he forced himself to speak at seminars and events, even when he was terrified.
Wow, that takes courage.
Right.
So facing your fears head on,
Okay.
even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Good lesson.
All right, so how about cynicism? How does that sabotage financial success?
Kiyosaki defines cynicism as criticizing without analyzing.
Okay.
It's that voice in your head that says this will never work, or it's all a scam before you've even taken the time to understand something.
Like his friend Richard, who passed on that great real estate deal because his neighbor told him it was a bad idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cynicism can prevent us from seeing opportunities and from taking action.
Yeah.
It's important to be skeptical, yes,
Yeah.
but also to be open-minded and analyze things for ourselves before just dismissing them.
All right, that makes sense. What about laziness? Is he suggesting we all become workaholics?
No, not at all. But he argues that laziness is often a symptom of fear or maybe a lack of motivation.
So it's not about being inherently lazy. It's about identifying the root cause of that lack of action.
Right, and then developing strategies for overcoming it.
Okay. Arrogance is the next one. How does that get in the way of financial success?
Kiyosaki argues that arrogance can prevent us from learning and growing.
Okay.
It's that voice that says, I know everything, or I'm always right, which can obviously lead to missed opportunities and costly mistakes.
He even tells a story about how he once lost a significant amount of money because he was too arrogant to listen to the advice of a more experienced investor. It's a reminder that even successful people make mistakes, and that sometimes the best way to learn is to just admit when you're wrong.
Exactly. He stresses the importance of being humble, of being willing to learn from others, and of constantly seeking out new knowledge.
Okay, last but not least, bad habits. What are some of those bad habits that he's calling out that can sabotage our financial success.
He talks about things like overspending, procrastination, negativity, a lack of discipline. These are the things that can, slowly but surely chip away at our financial well-being.
Yeah. He even suggests that people keep a journal to track their spending and their habits so they can become more aware of where their money is going and what patterns of behavior are holding them back.
Right. It's all about creating that self-awareness, being able to identify those self-sabotaging tendencies and then replace them with habits that support our financial goals.
This is starting to feel a lot more personal now. It's not just about learning financial concepts. It's about doing some inner work, examining our own beliefs and behaviors around money.
Absolutely. And Kiyosaki actually provides some practical advice on how to do that, from playing financial games like his cash flow game to finding mentors, taking classes, and reading books, obviously, on personal finance and investing.
He's a big believer in the power of education, isn't he?
He is, both formal education and self-education.
Yeah.
He stresses that financial intelligence is not something you're born with. It's something you develop through experience, education, and mentorship.
And he encourages people to be proactive, to take control of their financial future, and to not be afraid to ask for help along the way.
Right. He's basically saying you don't have to do this alone. There are resources and support systems available. You just have to be willing to seek them out.
All right, this has been a great overview of some of the key concepts and strategies from part 1 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
It's true. Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't just a one-time read. It's a book you come back to. And each time you uncover something new,
Absolutely. Okay, so in part 1, we covered a lot of ground. The contrasting mindsets of Kiyosaki's two dads, the importance of assets over liabilities, understanding the cash flow quadrant, and developing financial intelligence. It's a lot to take in, but I'm already starting to see things a little differently.
That's great to hear, and we're just getting started. One of the things I appreciate about Kiyosaki is that he doesn't just tell you what to do. He illustrates these concepts with really vivid stories.
Yeah, he's a master storyteller for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories, there's one in particular that stood out to me, the one about the village that needed water. It perfectly captures the essence of what he means by, having your money work for you.
Ah, yes, the parable of Ed and Bill.
Right.
A classic example of working hard versus working smart.
Okay, so to recap, this little village needs water, and 2 contractors get the job. Ed, the first contractor, immediately jumps in and starts hauling buckets of water back and forth from a lake. He's working hard, but he's also limited by how much he can carry and how fast he can move.
It's a perfect illustration of that employee quadrant.
Yeah.
Trading time for money, limited income potential.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Bill, the second contractor, disappears for months.
Months.
Yeah. Ed's thrilled thinking he's got this monopoly on the water supply, but then Bill shows up and he doesn't have any buckets.
What does he have?
He's got a team of workers, a bunch of pipes, and a plan to build a pipeline that will deliver fresh water to the village 24/7.
Bill took the time to build a system.
He did.
Exactly. He created a company, raised capital, hired a team. He invested in infrastructure that would generate consistent passive income for years to come.
And not only that, he charges 75% less than Ed for his superior water.
Wow.
Talk about a disruption.
This is the essence of those business owner and investor quadrants.
Yeah?
Bill wasn't just working hard, he was working smart.
Mm-hmm.
He created a system that allowed him to leverage time and other people's efforts to generate wealth, whether he was actively hauling water or not.
And the story doesn't end there. Bill, being the savvy entrepreneur that he is, realizes that other villages might need water too, so what does he do?
He scales his business.
He does?
He doesn't just replicate the pipeline. He sells his system. He teaches other villages how to build their own pipelines, creating a whole new revenue stream.
Talk about thinking outside the bucket.
It's a brilliant illustration of the power of leverage and the importance of thinking beyond just the immediate task. Bill wasn't just focused on hauling water. He was focused on creating a sustainable, scalable business that could generate wealth for years to come.
Yeah, this story is so powerful because it shows that financial freedom isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. It's about creating systems that generate income even when you're not actively working.
Exactly, and it highlights a key message from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's not about how much money you make, it's about what your money is doing for you.
Okay, so Bill clearly understood how to leverage his money. But what about taxes? Weren't those eating into his profits?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Yeah.
Kiyosaki argues that the rich don't pay taxes in the same way that the poor and middle class do.
Well, wait a minute. Is he suggesting tax evasion or something illegal?
Not at all. He's talking about understanding the tax code and using it to your advantage. He explains how corporations and other legal structures can be used to minimize your tax liability.
So it's not about breaking the rules, it's about playing by the rules, but also understanding the nuances of those rules.
Exactly. He argues that most people are taught to work hard, get a good job, pay your taxes, and hope for the best. But the rich often use corporations to shelter their income and to legally reduce their tax burden.
He even suggests that the whole take from the rich mentality actually backfires on the poor and middle class because it leads to higher taxes for everyone except the wealthy who understand how to legally avoid them.
It's a controversial topic, but it does make you think about how differently money is treated depending on which quadrant you're operating in.
So he's basically saying that financial education is crucial not just for building wealth, but for protecting it as well.
Absolutely. And he doesn't just talk about taxes in a theoretical way. He shares real-life examples of how he used his knowledge of the tax code to reduce his own tax liability and to maximize his profits.
Yeah, that's what I appreciate about Kiyosaki. He doesn't just tell you what to do, he shows you how he's done it.
Exactly. He walks the walk. And that's why his advice feels so authentic and actionable.
Okay, so we've talked about taxes, but there's another fear that I think a lot of people have when it comes to investing. The fear of losing money. How does Kiyosaki address that?
He acknowledges that the fear of losing money is real, but he also argues that it can be one of the biggest obstacles to financial success.
It's like that old saying, you have to spend money to make money. But for a lot of people, the idea of losing money is just too scary.
He encourages people to kind of shift their perspective. He says, befriend the fear of loss. Acknowledge it, but don't let it control your decisions. He also stresses that knowledge is power when it comes to investing. The more you understand about financial markets, the more informed decisions you can make, and the less likely you are to make, those costly mistakes.
He even suggests that people should view losing money as a potential cost of doing business, almost like tuition for learning valuable lessons.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of diversifying your investments, doing your due diligence, and not putting all your eggs in one basket.
So it's about taking calculated risks, not just blindly throwing money at something.
Right. And he provides a lot of practical advice on how to do that, from analyzing financial statements to understanding market trends to even just talking to experts in different fields.
That reminds me of the story he tells about learning to invest in tax lien certificates. Those are basically claims on properties that have unpaid taxes.
Right.
He went out to lunch with a government employee who specialized in tax lien certificates and picked their brain about the whole process.
Smart move.
That's brilliant. He got invaluable information and guidance just by asking the right person.
It's a reminder that learning opportunities are everywhere, and sometimes the best teachers are the people who are already doing what you want to do.
Okay, so we've talked about overcoming the fear of losing money, but there's another mental hurdle that Kiyosaki addresses in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Chicken Little syndrome.
Ah, yes, the voice of doubt and negativity that tells us we're not good enough, smart enough, or capable of achieving our goals.
We all have that voice in our heads, don't we? It
Yeah.
can be so insidious, just chipping away at our confidence and preventing us from taking action.
He provides some really practical strategies for overcoming that chicken little voice.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is to challenge those negative thoughts instead of just letting them run rampant. Ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have to support this belief?
Okay.
He also emphasizes the importance of surrounding yourself with positive people who support your goals and dreams.
Yeah, the company you keep has a profound impact on your mindset, doesn't it? If you're surrounded by people who are constantly complaining, doubting, or playing it safe, it's going to rub off on you.
But if you surround yourself with people who are positive, supportive, and action-oriented,
Mm-hmm.
it creates a much more empowering environment.
Exactly. It's like having a cheerleading squad for your dreams.
Okay.
So we've talked about overcoming fear, cynicism, laziness, arrogance, and bad habits. We've discussed the importance of financial intelligence, understanding taxes, and overcoming the fear of losing money. What other key takeaways are there from Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Where one of the most powerful, I think, is the idea that you need to find your own path to wealth. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person might not work for another.
Right. He's a big believer in experimentation, isn't he? Trying different things, seeing what resonates with you, and finding a path that aligns with your values and your goals.
Exactly. He encourages people to think beyond that traditional go to school, get a good job, work for 40 years, and retire model.
Yeah, he even suggests that people consider working for free to gain valuable experience and learn new skills, which I have to admit sounded crazy to me at first.
I know it sounds counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But his point is that sometimes the best education you can get is by working alongside someone who's already successful in a field you're interested in.
So instead of just focusing on a paycheck, you're gaining knowledge, skills, and connections that can pay off in the long run.
He even talks about how he learned to invest in real estate by working for free for a successful real estate developer. He was basically getting a free education in exchange for his time and effort.
That's a pretty amazing example of how thinking outside the box can lead to incredible opportunities.
It is, and it ties back to his emphasis on developing a work-to-learn mentality rather than a work-to-earn mentality.
So instead of chasing a paycheck, you're focused on acquiring knowledge and skills that can be applied to a variety of opportunities.
Exactly. It's about investing in yourself, which is ultimately the best investment you can make.
Okay, this is all great stuff, but I have to ask, what about people who are stuck in a job they hate but can't afford to just quit? What advice does Kiyosaki have for them?
He acknowledges that not everyone can just walk away from their job, but he encourages people to be proactive and to start taking steps toward their financial freedom even while they're still working.
So maybe it's starting a side hustle, investing in a rental property, or even just taking a class to learn a new skill.
Exactly. It's about making small but consistent progress toward your goals, even if it's just an hour or two a week. He also stresses the importance of developing your sales and marketing skills regardless of your profession.
Okay, those are definitely essential skills for entrepreneurs, but how do they apply to people who are not planning on starting their own business?
He argues that everyone is selling something, whether it's their ideas, their skills, or even just themselves in a job interview.
So learning how to communicate, effectively build relationships, and persuade others is valuable in any field.
Exactly, and he encourages people to take the time to develop those skills.
Okay, so we've talked about finding your own path to wealth, developing a work-to-learn mentality, and the importance of sales and marketing skills. What other key takeaways are there?
Well, Kiyosaki is a big believer in the power of making lots of offers, especially when it comes to investing.
What does he mean by that?
He argues that you don't know the right price for something until you've tested the market and seen how people respond. He tells a story about how he once bought a house for $20,000 less than the asking price, simply because he was the only one who made an offer.
Wow, talk about a steal. So he's basically saying don't be afraid to put yourself out there and make an offer, even if you think it might be too low.
Exactly. The worst that can happen is they say no.
And if they say yes, you could end up getting an incredible deal.
He also emphasizes the importance of shopping for bargains in all markets, not just when things are booming. He compares it to shopping at a supermarket. When there's a sale on toilet paper, people stock up, but when the housing or stock market crashes, they run away in fear.
That's such a great analogy. It's true, people tend to get caught up in the hype and the fear rather than thinking rationally about the opportunity.
Exactly. He encourages people to view market downturns as opportunities to buy assets at a discount, knowing that profits are made in the buying, not the selling.
So it's about being a contrarian going against the herd mentality.
Right? It takes courage, discipline, and a strong belief in your own analysis of the situation.
That's where developing your financial intelligence comes in, right?
Absolutely. The more you understand about financial markets, the better equipped you'll be to make those contrarian moves when everyone else is running scared.
Okay, what other strategies does he recommend for finding those hidden gems, those opportunities that everyone else seems to miss?
He talks about the importance of thinking big and not letting your current circumstances limit your vision. He argues that even small investors can achieve big results if they think strategically and leverage their resources.
He tells a great story about how he and some friends were able to negotiate a great deal on computers simply because they pooled their resources and bought in bulk. It's a reminder that collaboration and strategic thinking can amplify your results even if you're starting with limited capital.
He also stresses the importance of learning from history and studying the successes and failures of those who've come before you. There's no need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to financial success.
He points to examples like Colonel Sanders, who didn't achieve massive success until after he lost everything in his 60s, and Bill Gates, who was one of the richest men in the world before he was 30. It's a reminder that age is not a barrier to success, and that it's never too late to start building your financial future.
Absolutely. He also encourages people to read biographies of successful entrepreneurs and investors to learn from their experiences and to glean insights that can be applied to their own lives.
So it's about standing on the shoulders of giants, learning from their mistakes and their triumphs.
Exactly. It's like having a cheat sheet for success.
Okay, this has been an incredible deep dive into some of the key concepts and strategies from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on something that Kiyosaki talks about near the end of the book that really resonated with me, his definition of wealth.
It's not just about how much money you have in the bank, is it?
Exactly. He introduces this concept from Buckminster Fuller, who defined wealth as a person's ability to survive so many number of days forward, or if I stopped working today, how long could I survive?
That's such a powerful shift in thinking it's not about your net worth on paper. It's about the sustainability of your financial system.
Right. He uses an example. Say you have $1,000 a month in cash flow from assets, but your monthly expenses are $2,000. You might not be rich yet, but you're halfway to being wealthy.
Because you've got half a month of financial survivability covered purely by your assets, not your job.
Precisely. And once your passive income from assets equals or exceeds your expenses, that's when you achieve true financial freedom. You're no longer reliant on a paycheck to survive.
It's about creating a life where you have choices, where you're not trapped by financial constraints.
It's about having the freedom to pursue your passions, to spend time with your loved ones, to travel the world, or to simply do nothing at all if you choose.
It's about having the financial resources to live life on your own terms.
Okay, I'm feeling incredibly inspired right now. It's like Kiyosaki has given us this incredible toolkit for building a life of abundance, but it's up to us to use those tools.
He makes a point of saying that this book is a guide, not a guarantee.
It's like a map, but you still have to choose the destination and walk the path yourself.
Exactly, and that's where the real journey begins.
Okay, before we wrap up part 2, I want to touch on one more important aspect of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The idea of overcoming your I don't wants.
Yeah, so those sneaky little excuses we use to justify our inaction.
It's so easy to get caught in that trap, isn't it? I don't want to deal with tenants, or I don't want to risk losing money in the stock market.
He argues that these I don't wants are often masks for deeper fears, like the fear of failure rejection or the unknown.
So it's not that we genuinely don't want to do something, it's that we're afraid of what might happen if we do.
Exactly, and he encourages people to flip the script to focus on what they do want instead of what they don't want.
So instead of saying, I don't want to fix toilets, you might say, I want to build a portfolio of rental properties that generate passive income. It's about shifting your mindset from avoidance to attraction.
And he reminds us that achieving financial freedom often requires us to face those briar patches, those obstacles and challenges that stand between us and our goals.
It's like that scene in the movie The Princess Bride, where Wesley has to choose between 2 goblets, one filled with poison and one with wine. He has to face his fear and make a choice, knowing that there's a risk involved.
And Kiyosaki's argument is that the reward is worth the risk, that the discomfort of facing those briar patches pales in comparison to the freedom and abundance that awaits on the other side.
Okay, I think that's a perfect place to end. Part 2, we've covered a lot of ground, from taxes and investing to overcoming fear and finding your own path to wealth.
He really does. He challenges us to really rethink our relationship with money and to see the world through a different lens.
He's given us a lot to chew on, that's for sure. In part 2, we explored that parable of the water pipeline. We dove into taxes, investments, and talked about overcoming those mental hurdles, the chicken little voice and those sneaky little I don't wants. I'm ready to put all this into practice, but I'm also curious about what Kiyosaki has to say about, the bigger picture, the purpose of it all.
Yeah, the why behind the how.
Exactly.
Well, he definitely addresses that. He argues that building wealth isn't just about accumulating money. It's about, aligning your finances with your passions and purpose.
It's about designing a life where money works for you so you can focus on what matters most.
Exactly. And that leads us back to that powerful definition of wealth we touched on earlier, the one from Buckminster Fuller.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about your net worth. It's about your ability to survive. How long could you sustain your lifestyle if you stopped working today? That's the real measure of wealth.
So it's not about how much you have, it's about how long you can last. That really puts things into perspective.
It does. And it ties into another key takeaway from Rich Dad, Poor Dad: the importance of financial education. Kiyosaki argues that financial literacy is crucial not just for building wealth, but for navigating life in general.
He says that schools often fail to teach us these essential skills, which honestly leaves a lot of us unprepared for the real world of money.
And he's not just talking about knowing how to balance a checkbook or create a budget. He's talking about really understanding how money works, how to make it work for you, and how to protect yourself from, financial predators.
Right, the sharks out there.
Exactly.
He even suggests that people should view their lives as a series of financial experiments, where they're constantly learning, adapting, and refining their strategies.
It's a great way to look at it. It's about embracing that growth mindset when it comes to money, recognizing that mistakes are inevitable, but that they're also really valuable learning opportunities.
He's a big believer in the power of mentorship too, right?
Absolutely.
Finding people who are already successful in the areas you want to grow in, learning from their experiences.
He stresses the importance of surrounding yourself with people who are, smarter than you when it comes to money. And he's not just talking about financial advisors or investment gurus or anything like that.
Well, who is he talking about then?
Remember that story he tells about how he learned to invest in tax land certificates?
Yeah.
By taking a government employee who specialized in them out to lunch.
Yeah, he just picked their brain over a meal.
Exactly. He got all this invaluable information and guidance just by asking the right person. It's a reminder that learning opportunities are everywhere, and sometimes the best teachers are the people who are already doing what you want to do.
So find those people and don't be afraid to, reach out, ask questions, and learn from their experiences.
Absolutely. He also encourages people to be proactive, seek out those opportunities, rather than just waiting for them to come to you.
Right, make things happen. He's a big believer in, the power of making lots of offers, especially when it comes to investing.
Yeah, he argues that you don't really know the right price for something until you've tested the market and seen how people respond.
He told that great story about how he bought a house for $20,000 less than the asking price just because he was the only one who made an offer.
Wow. Talk about a deal.
It's incredible. So he's saying, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Make an offer, even if you think it might be too low.
Exactly. The worst that can happen is they say no.
And if they say yes, you could end up with an amazing deal.
And he stresses this idea of shopping for bargains, not just when things are booming, but in all markets. He compares it to shopping at a supermarket, When there's a sale on toilet paper, people stock up. But when the housing market crashes, they run away in fear.
It's so true. People get caught up in the hype and the fear rather than thinking, rationally about the opportunity.
Exactly. He encourages people to view those market downturns as opportunities to buy assets at a discount, knowing that, profits are made in the buying, not the selling.
So be a contrarian. Go against that herd mentality. You have to have the courage and the financial intelligence to see value where others don't.
Absolutely. He also encourages people to, think big. Don't let your current circumstances limit your vision. He argues that even small investors can achieve big results if they think strategically and leverage their resources.
He told that story about how he and his friends got a great deal on computers because they pooled their money together and bought in bulk. It's a reminder that collaboration and strategic thinking can really amplify your results, even if you're starting with, limited capital.
Right, there are ways to make it work.
And finally, Kiyosaki emphasizes the importance of learning from history, studying the successes and failures of those who came before you.
There's no need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to financial success.
He points to examples like Colonel Sanders. He didn't achieve massive success until after he lost everything in his 60s. And then Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world, before he was even 30.
It's a great reminder that age is not a barrier to success. It's never too late to start building your financial future.
And he encourages people to read biographies of successful entrepreneurs and investors to, learn from their experiences and to glean insights that they can apply to their own lives.
It's like having a cheat sheet for success.
So after this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, are you playing it safe or playing it smart?
Are you building assets or are you accumulating liabilities?
What's one small step you can take today to start shifting your financial trajectory?
Kiyosaki encourages us to find our own path. What if, instead of asking, how can I get rich, we ask, how can my wealth help me make a difference in the world?
What briar patch are you willing to face to escape that rat race and find your path to financial freedom?